Yo, it's Guido coming at you with the Tactics Talk. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. And as you can see, I have the Panhard EBR 75 parentheses FL10 end parentheses. That's not how it works. Anyway, this is the first wheeled tank in World of Tanks. Look at that. It's got wheels. There are no tracks. And it looks like an old-timey 1930s car with a massive AMX turret. Kind of laughing at it. What kind of car does that remind you of? Actually, the front of that thing looks like a, I don't know, Rolls Royce from the 30s or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's a car, it's a tank, it's a reconnaissance vehicle, it's I don't know what. And I don't think it knows what it is in this game. I don't think it knows exactly what its purpose is. Full disclosure, I wasn't going to do a review on this tank because I stay away from test vehicles. This is a weird case though, and maybe it's a good thing because we are testing it on the live server, and people don't really like it when game companies have the players test things, but when you get to as mature a game as this is, I think it's probably appropriate. I've always contended that the test server is awful for testing balance. It's very good, obviously, for testing the technical aspects of the game. Do the models work? Do the guns shoot? How do the maps, collision models, all that kind of thing work as far as the way they are supposed to be built? But as far as balance goes, a test server is awful. And I think the evidence of bad tank after bad tank, not as in bad it's not good, but bad as in it's bad for the game, have come out of test servers with the seal O approval. Hey, everything's fine. And then they show up and we have a 268 version 4. So I think that's probably a pretty good step. And the reason I mention that is because, like I said, I've never done a review on a test server because, frankly, this tank is not in its final iteration. I think it's probably pretty close, but you never know. It could be completely changed based on the information that they get from this test. The CCs were given it, a bunch of the, both in EU, RU, and NA, and I assume in Asia as well. We were all given 15 rental codes to give out, which I've given out most of them. I'll give out one more in this video towards, well, somewhere. I almost gave it away. You have to watch the whole, wait a minute. I can't say that, then you're not, wait a minute. So there's probably a lot of these running around is my point of all that yapping and babbling. So hopefully they get some good test data coming back off of that. Interestingly, they told you to turn off your assault and your encounter modes, I assume, so that they can gather the data all from one kind of map mode, which I think is a wise thing. So here it is. They've kicked it out, and I'm sort of left wondering, you know, what its purpose in the game is, to be quite honest. You might say, well, Guido, it's another light tank. All right, noted, it's a light tank, but it's not really very good at being a light tank. At least one very critical aspect of a light tank, which is the spotting range or the view range. And I think that one is well known by everybody. By the time I get this video out, it's going to be the talk of the town, or is already. So we'll do a review of it. The last full disclosure piece is I did awful in this tank. So it's going to be hard for me not to color this review with that. I'll try to keep it out as much as possible. But I will discuss the difficulties of running this tank. And generally the idea that this is a very high, in this current iteration, a very high skill floor and a very high skill ceiling kind of tank. There are people, better players than I, doing really well in it. But I'm a pretty good player, and I'm doing really bad at it. Now, when we get to that part, I will go ahead and lay out all my excuses. So validate me at that point. Guido, you're not that bad. You're just dumb. Anyway, this is a standard thing, man. We will do an overview. We'll look at the tech tree considerations, look at the 3D model, do a comparison as best as I can. Unfortunately, it's not in the comparison tool yet because it's not in its final iteration, but we will do that in kind of a kludged together manner. Take a look at my pathetic stats, my setup, and then some examples of gameplay. Just to give you a general idea of what this is going to be. And again, understand, this is not the final iteration of this tank. The stats may change. The tank may change considerably, depending on what information they get back. Or who knows, maybe it shows up with these exact stats. We shall see. Let's get into the overview. Here she is, the EBR. This is a mouthful. 75 FL10 Panhard. 4 wheels on each side. Again, no tracks. You're going to find this out when you start running it or when you see me play it. It does not get tracked per se. It loses wheels and gets slowed down. So it never actually stops, which is an interesting idea in concept, but doesn't really do what you would think it does in practice. It gets you dead, kind of like being tracked, to be quite honest. Pretty big tank for a light. You know, even 90. It's a tier 8 premium, by the way. The even 90 is this tiny thing. Can we talk about how this is too small and there's no way there's people in there? All right, we'll leave it alone. Look how big. It's giant, right? It's huge. Well, I don't know. Not really. People have been talking about that a lot. The WZ is a pretty big tank. All right, so that's fine. What about an LT 432? Well, I mean, that's taller by slightly, but even the 432 is longer. And the LTTB, I don't know. It's about the same size, to be quite honest. The Hawk, bulky little box of a thing right there, you know, sitting there. And then we got the holy cow, Bulldog. Did you have to eat the whole sandwich? Good Lord, look at this guy. And then the T92 down there. Frankly, it's not that much bigger. It's at the larger end of the tier 8 lights, but it's not really much bigger. Now, what I will say is it is a big billboard side kind of guy and does tend to get hit pretty easily. Probably easier than you might think, even with the speed. You know, we had a big accuracy buff. I don't know, it wasn't too long ago, I guess 2 years. You've been around as long as I am. It doesn't seem like long ago. Some of you may have started playing since then and not remembered. But with the accuracy buff and with the accuracy of artillery, they don't have any trouble hitting you. It doesn't matter if you're doing 80 miles an hour or not. So really, I think that speed is a little bit less consequential than you might think. Goofy angles right here, actually, and it does actually happen to have some armor. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's got 0 armor, he gets pinned by everything. Okay, yeah, mediums, heavies, like every light tank, minus potentially the LT-432 and his turret and sometimes the LTTB on the front of it. But its armor is not any worse than a Bat Chat 12T, better than an even 90, which does actually almost have 0. It's better than the Hawk 12. We'll take a look at that as well. So while you're not going to ever rely on this thing's armor, technically it's not worst in class, and it's right in the middle of the other tanks. I mean, other than the LT-432, which has crazy armor for a light tank. That's pretty much it on the overview. Not much else to note. It is an auto loader there, and you'll notice there's no tracks, there's wheels. You can see the little wheelie deals right there. All right, let's move on to tech tree considerations for the Panhard. All right, this is a light tank, so it's going to be on the French light tank line as far as a trainer goes. Kind of like the even 90 in considerations, other than it's got 4 people in it. You've got an extra radio operator and radio operator that you're dragging around in the Panhard that you're not dragging around in the 12T, 75, Bat Chat 12T, which is confusing, 1390, and the MX 13105. And these are mediums up here and down here bracketing the lights. So if you were training a crew in your Panhard and wanted to put in a medium, well, you'd train them back over to medium guys, and then you wouldn't be able to put them in your Panhard. So you're buying this, if you're buying it at all as a trainer, to train French crew, which means 3 of them are going to work in the 105, 90, 12T, 75, 12T family, but you're going to have an extra radio operator that you're either going to have to drag from somewhere else and retrain if you want to do things like Brothers in Arms and have it work. And then he sits on the sidelines while the regular tech tree tanks get pulled out. It's just one of those things. It's okay. It's better than having less crew than the tech tree tanks, but it's still kind of painful as far as that goes. So not a one-for-one kind of trainer. There are no modules. It's a premium tank. Interesting that they didn't make it a separate kind of vehicle class. I thought that was an interesting decision. I wondered if they might make a wheeled vehicle class and give it some kind of specific role. That would be kind of hard to do. Light tanks are for scouting in this game. These wheeled vehicles are kind of for scouting in this game. So, but I don't know. I might have made a wheeled vehicle class and tried to find some kind of way to wedge it into its own little niche. You know, it's the Rager that gets in the back and goes after the artillery. We'll talk about that in just a little while because I don't know. I'm not privy to those decisions on whether that's what its role is supposed to be with all the speed that it has and the near zero not near zero, but pathetic view range that it has. I'm a little bit unsure. It would be very interesting for the developers to give us a little inside info on, all right, what were you trying to get at with this thing? What was the goal? And then players could look at it and go, and I'm really diverging here a little bit, but players could look at that intention and go, hey, boss, your intention was X, but here's how we see it and the way we play it. So we can start negotiating on what is going to happen next. Not that we negotiate and tell them what to do, but at least give some feedback. That's not in a vacuum, right? Not in a development vacuum. I personally, Guido has no idea what they're trying to get at with this thing, other than a fast, fun tank with a kind of a new game mechanic of driving with wheels. If that was it, then okay, mission accomplished. But I'm not really sure where it fits in the game, to be quite honest. So, and again, I'm really going off on a tangent here, but I like content. I think content's king. I like new game mechanics as long as they're not ridiculous, and I'm not saying this one is. I'm kind of on this one. I'm kind of left on the fence, going, I don't know. I could fall over on either side of this guy. I'm not really sure where he's trying to go with this, to be quite honest. If I got inside information, would I like it better or worse? I don't know. But right now it's just a big vacuum, and I'm not really sure. Not really sure what the purpose of this tank is. Now, if its purpose is to rage around and go off jumps, all right, well, there you go. It's pretty good at that. Let's go to 3D model. All right, here it is, the latest in hover technology. These little triangle things here are actually booster pack. No, there's wheels somewhere, but that's not made it to the 3D model. You can see that while it's not a lot of armor, you know those weird angles that you were seeing when I showed you on the overview, that's what that is. So yeah, you'll get some goofy bounces off this, provided it's not overmatched or something. About 40 or so on the front. The sides are very thin at 16, so yeah, everything that's mom is going to go through that, overmatch it, yada yada. Turret has weird angles like the 12T. I think it's basically the AMX turret that's on this thing of one of them, maybe the 75. I'm not sure which gun's on this. I think it's a 75. So what that will do for you is on occasion you're going to get that weird auto bounce angle thing. Heat's going to have a little trouble depending on where it hits you. Again, you're not going to poke out behind a rock and go, ooh, my armor's angled. You're not going to pin me. It's just going to be a pure luck thing, and on occasion it will save you. Just beware if you're giving them a broadside, which is problematic because the best way to use this thing's speed is from right to left or left to right. So they have to track and give you a big lead fire, but that also provides the largest billboard that you've got. So a little wiggle jiggle at either going straight at them or away from them, the old wiggle jiggle thing is probably going to make it about as hard to hit this thing as possible. When I have fought them on a few occasions that I have lately, it is difficult to track them, and you do need a lot of lead fire, but on the amount of times I've been hit, people aren't really having that much trouble with it, and I have been blasted at full speed 80 kilometers an hour by HE, which has no trouble obliterating you, and I mean HE from artillery shells there. So that's about it for the 3D model. You are going to get pinned nearly every time. You are going to get, on occasion, a lucky bounce, and sometimes lower tier stuff will have a little trouble, not much, with angled front armor. And that's pretty much it for that. All right, let's look at the comparison. I had to kludge it together. I've got the other tier 8 lights, most of them minus, I think, the Chinese light, which it really isn't very similar to at all. And then I had to use the statistics little card there over on the right. So we'll take a look at this and start off with damage per shot. It's on the low end at 175. You've got 2 shells in the clip. It is an auto loader. Penetration is 180, which is actually decent. Nothing wrong with the penetration. Low end on the damage, but the DPM, if you look at it, is 1780. We'll look at the rest of the tanks, and it's right in there. At the low end, admittedly, but much better than even 90. Interestingly, the 2 tier 8 French light tank, premium light tanks are kind of oddballs. They really are. The even 90 and this one don't really fit the standard light tank idea or meta. But the Batchat 12T, which is what it's maybe closest to on the French side, is at 1595 DPM. So while you might look at it and go, God, I got a 175 damage, I have a 2-shot autoloader. Well, it reloads at so fast at 9 or 10 seconds. It gets down to 9 with the right equipment on there, that the DPM is right there with any of the others. So you're not losing too much. It is a little bit anemic. Other things, rate of fire, 9.38 reload time. I talked about that already. Remember, it's an autoloader, so some of these numbers don't really fit. Now this one was interesting. The turret traverse. The turret traverse on this thing is 70 something. Where did it go? 68.84, which is top of the class. You know why it does that? Because it's so fast. Otherwise, in game terms, it would be outrunning its turret so often. It'd be very annoying. So they upped the traverse a little bit on this. In theory, it's got a 1375 turret on it, but the turret does traverse a little bit. I think that is a game balance and design decision right there. Gun depression is -8, which is pretty good. That's really comfortable. This thing can do some ridge poking. That's helpful because as you're hauling rear around the map and going over a lot of the undulations and bumps, it's nice that your gun is not constantly falling off the target. So that is useful for circling and raging by on strafing runs and all that kind of good thing. It'd be nicer if it was -10, but it is sitting at -8, and that happens to be better than the Batchat 12T at -6 right there. The aiming time is pretty fantastic at 1.15. This is a very accurate gun. I think that's also a balanced decision because most of the French autoloader guns are terrible dispersions and aiming and all that good stuff, but this one is actually pretty decent. I think that's so while it's raging around, it's actually able to hit something along the way. It's got a point, where's the dispersion? 0.36 is, it's okay. Again, you're going to want to put all the things on this, and we'll talk about my loadout in just a minute in order to get it to its max capability, because this thing will really rely on its stats to keep it alive. So it needs to hit stuff. It needs to be fast, keep moving, have as much camo as possible, all that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's going to get obliterated pretty quickly. I already talked about the DPM. So hit points, it's low. It's not even 90 low, down at 900, but it is at 960, so that's not a whole lot of hit points, or sorry, 950. But really, I mean, it's 50 less and 150 less than the rest of them, so whatever, not that bad. Hull armor, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Everyone's like, it's got no armor. It's no armor, man. It's, no armor. Well, it's got more than most of these guys do. I mean, it's not an LT-432 or an LTTB, but look at the poor Hawk at 14, 14, 14. This guy's sitting at 40, 16, 40, and even the turret is decent at 40 in the front. So look at the rest of these turrets, not even close. Again, is there a big difference between 25 and 40? I don't know. You know, maybe on some of the overmatch and the lower caliber stuff, do the math on some of those things. Maybe that's important right there. But in general, the more armor you have, the better. And a little extra armor on this thing certainly didn't hurt its speed, now did it? Which brings us to mobility, where this thing really shines. Taking a look at the top speed, this says 60. 60, remember, it's got two modes, fast and maneuver, however you want to look at it. One of them, it goes fast, the other one, it can maneuver. Fast is 80 kilometers, I think, an hour. Whatever, yeah, kilometers an hour. And a maneuver is 60 kilometers an hour max. Now, the other thing about this tank is it goes as fast forward as it does backwards, which can be a little discombobulating as you're trying to drive backwards. But just realize, unlike the tanks where you go raging forward, and if you want to back up, you're going slow, once it starts scooting backwards, it gets going. That is useful for getting out of tight spots. This thing likes to go forwards and backwards fast. It does not like to turn, and it does not spin in place because it doesn't have tracks. It has to turn like your car does. So it does it even show a traverse speed? I don't think there is even a traverse speed on here. That's not something I looked at. If it is, it's not really a factor right there. It would be more a turn rate, which is not something that is a stat that they show, although each of these tanks will have a turn rate. What does that mean? When it's circling something, in maneuver mode, it can do it pretty well. It can even do it decently in fast mode, but your turn circle is going to be much wider or larger, I guess, which does give the enemy tank a little bit more opportunity, depending on how his hull traverse is and turret traverse, to keep his gun on you. I think I have at least one example of me circling somebody to show you. For the concealment, this is another nod to game balance, I would say. The even 90 is at 22.12, which is about 1/3 the size of the Panhard, and the Panhard is sitting at 2267, which would be number 2 in its class, even though it is at the large end of size. So I think that was a nod to the numbers to try to make this thing a little bit more useful, because then they kick it right in the old Jimmy and give it a 310 view range. That one hurts. Ouch. That's painful. That's what, tier 5, tier 4 kind of stuff right there. And even in a good setup, you will struggle to get near 400. You heard that right. You will struggle to get near 400. What's everything running around with, scout-wise and even medium-wise, at tier 8 to 10, which you will see plenty of? Yeah, 445, maxed out kind of stuff with extra burn through for days. So this thing struggles mightily in the spotting. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the gameplay right there. In the signal range, my goodness, 782, near the top of... Hey, how come this Soviet LT-432 has such a massively awesome radio? I thought the Russian radios were bad. That number kills me every time. I need to do an in-depth analysis one day of every tank's signal range and its effect on the game. None. That's not true. Lower tiers, there is some, but higher tiers, not a factor. So there you go. What would you say about it? Man, I usually try to wrap this thing up, and I'm just left here scratching my head. It's really fast, and it jumps things cool, and it does have some capability on a lot of capability on open maps to get in and out of places, provided you don't get stopped or hit something, because it takes a while to get up to speed again, or really need to maneuver in a tight spot. Man, if you have to maneuver in a tight spot, it is painful in this tank. And that's just a case of it being a wheeled vehicle. Just think about it. You're driving your car around and you're attempting to get through a city and all that. Whereas with a tank, you can just kind of shift your hull with the tracks, and while you're not very fast in a tank, you can really kind of spin around in circles. Well, this thing's not going to do that unless you're doing a power slide or something like that. All right, let's move on to the next. And now for the embarrassing bit. Man, was I bad. Am I bad? Not was, still am. Terrible in this tank. Usually I do 30 battles, and I think that's a pretty good sample size for a review, a first look review like this. And, you know, if I'm anywhere from 50 to 60, I'm pretty happy, you know. I'll talk about whether I might be overperforming or underperforming, where I might end up 55, 58, 60 if I'm feeling like I really like the tank or the tank is good. But I don't know. I'm not sure. If I could get to 50%, I feel like I might throw a small party of some kind. So I played 6 more in an attempt to look good for you guys. Looking good in the shower. Let's hit 50%. Well, you can see what the results of that were. I think I went down because I believe I was at 45 when I attempted that effort. All right, 500 average experience. I mean, that's awful too. I could accept the 42% if my average experience showed that I was actually doing something in the game, but I'm not, because my damage is 553 and received is 876 with a 662 assist, which is okay, kind of there for my tier 8 lights, but the damage dished out is bad. And look at that survival rate, 13.89. Well, that tells a tale. Clearly, I'm YOLOing. So, excuse time, validate me. Here we go. Bad connection, still on a hot spot. New driving mechanic, trying to get used to it. A lot of games attempting to use the speed to see if that was actually possible. Guess what? It's not, really. It is late game, but you got to wait for that and not YOLO early. Getting myself into trouble because of the speed, so a lot of things added together. There's probably, without exaggeration, 4 to 5 games of me disconnecting and driving off cliffs or into the enemy and blah, 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 blah. So those are all my excuses. Bottom line, I knew I had a bad connection. I knew that overextending was probably going to be a problem. I actually learned that because I did play 36 games and still continued to try to test the boundaries of this tank. And had I controlled for all that, I probably could have eked out a 50% or maybe slightly higher if I was much, much, much more careful. But then I'm left asking myself, what is that what this tank is? Is this tank the be super careful light tank, wait for the end of the game to assassinate? Well, yeah, it kind of is. I don't think it was designed that way, but that's sort of how you have to play it. I'm not saying you camp. I'm not saying you can't get out there and get aggressive. On the right maps, Proc, Malnovka, some of the other, maybe even Redshire, things like that, you can rage around a bit, going over hills and jumping things. It's actually kind of fun when it works. It's kind of miserable when it does not. So yes, some of those maps exist, but Himmelsdorf, some of the city maps, you're really left scratching, going, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do here, other than pick at the edges, look for an opportunity, and try to squeeze through. And then guess what? You find the 2 or 3 or sometimes 1 TD that never left cap. And you run into that scorpion and you come through with lower hit points because one guy hit you trying to get by and boom, you're gone. Or you get shotgunned by artillery. So wah, wah, wah. What is the point of all that? It is not an easy tank to drive. It is not an easy tank to drive. Let's take a look at how I had it set up. All right, for my setup, what was I carrying? I had a camouflage net. I might actually move that off there. I don't know if it's as useful as I thought it might be. Based on, yeah, you can get to a forward bush and camo up, but you can't really see anything. So it's active scouting really for this guy, or active assassination movement. I think vents are something you want to have, and optics are mandatory. I got rid of the fire extinguisher, just accepted burning if I get lit on fire. Happened a couple times. I hate being lit on fire, but I felt I really needed the coffee to help out with the guys. You'll notice my crew is not good. This is also gimping myself unnecessarily. I was just trying to, I guess as I'm thinking about it, I was thinking I just wanted to train up a wheeled crew, but who cares? It's a light tank. So maybe, hey, maybe I'm starting to hit on why I stunk so bad in the tank. I think you really want to put a good crew in this, is my point. I have a great crew over in my ELC even 90. You can see it's got 4 skills. So after I do this review, I will be switching out the even 90 crew, at least the 3 that I can put in there. I won't have Brothers in Arms until that last poor radio operator gets it. You could bring another guy in from somewhere else who has Brothers in Arms that's a radio operator, or just retrain, blah, 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 blah. So point is there, Brothers in Arms is also going to help. I didn't have it. And Sixth Sense is going to be absolutely critical for a tank like this. So I ran 36 battles without it, and that's part of why my stats are bad, minus that I stunk in it. So don't do that same mistake. A little bit of hubris. I thought I would be fine, but clearly I was not. So that was my setup. Now, what else could you put in here? Realize that, and here we go. This is the one that, of all the things that made me scratch my head about this tank, this is the one that really made me scratch my head. And I sort of understood why they did it, but you cannot put binoculars on this tank. Okay, you heard me, right? Yeah, you cannot put binoculars on this tank. That exposes a couple interesting things in this game. They don't want that, I assume, because they don't want this super fast scout to get in really forward bushes before anyone can see it, light up its binocs, and let the other team shred your team, or your team shred their team while they attempt to get to their first position. At which point the question must be asked, why are their maps designed like that? Which has a counter argument that, all right, well, that's what scouts are for. So I don't have a good answer on that one. My assumption is the reason the binocs aren't there is for that very reason. Because the first thing I thought about with this fast tank is, man, I know some spots I want to try to get to on some of these maps that are one bush that are usually a bush too far, where you just get obliterated. But this tank might actually get you there. Well, you don't have the binocs to do it. Not only do you not have the binocs, you don't even have a decent normal view range to do it. So that was an interesting decision, which tends to make you think, all right, they're really looking for a mobile scout assassination kind of guy right there. So anyway, all that being said, if you wanted to go more offensive, you could drop a vert stab on there instead of the camouflage net, and I think that's probably what I would switch out to right there. Gun laying drive, not useful. Maybe toolbox to help you fix broken wheels. That could be an option on this one. Large kit and a toolbox to help you not be doing 20, 40 kilometers while they're shredding you the rest of the way. I don't think enhanced suspension is going to help, because right now this thing is almost indestructible as far as jumping off things. Now, not when it hits straight down. Like you come off and bounce your nose off something, you're going to blow up like all the rest of the tanks. But if you land on the suspension, it's pretty hard to take any damage. The physics are also wonky. It's a little bit glued to the ground. It's hard to roll over, I think for good reason, because they don't want them rolling all over the place based on the speed. We'll see how that pans out whenever they come back in their final iteration, because right now you can really jump off all kinds of stuff that you could never do in a tank. You'd roll all over the place or land on your side or whatever. And this thing, it's almost impossible to roll over. I don't know if that's the answer for gameplay or not, but I think it's the answer for keeping them not rolling constantly right now. We'll see how that actually pans out. So that's pretty much the setup for me. The only other thing you would do is add a directive potentially to increase the view range and the other capabilities of the tank right there, and then improved equipment if you're going to throw improved vents or something like that on there. Maybe even improved optics. There you go, possibility. Let's take a look at some examples. Here's a bottom tier game. I am on highway, spawned into the southwest, and I'm going to go into this big open field of death, which is pretty much a death sentence for any other tank. And I'm going to come on up here. Again, I'm just testing the limits. This is something I would never do in another scout. I'm just going to rage up here and see if I can't start spotting guys. Now, the good news is this map's changed a little bit, so this position is a little bit more viable right now, but I am lighting guys up. Notice I don't have 6th sense, so I'm not getting lit up. They probably saw me a while ago. And I'm just giving lights to guys right there. So on a map like this where you can kind of fall off into terrain and not be directly targeted, light some guys up who are lumbering along trying to get through to other points, there are possibilities that don't exist for other tanks. Now, that's pretty cool because that's kind of a gameplay capability that not a lot of other tanks, maybe no other tanks, really have other than in very lucky situations. Now, if a couple of them just decided to come up here and shoot at me, I'd be in trouble, but look at all the snipers that are getting shots on these guys. There's the 110 E3 or 5 or whatever that was, E5, who did not appreciate me lighting up him and all his buddies trying to get over there. So I ended up with a little bit of spotting damage at 259. But pretty quickly, I'm kind of left to, all right, well, you know, what's the story, Rory? What are we going to do here? Yeah, I'm raging around in the middle. They all know I'm sitting here doing this. What do I do next? So rage around, rage around. And I'm just thinking, well, maybe I can come up to the city and light some guys up here. But again, the point of this is moot or not much point to it other than artillery. Really, I'm outside of most of the draw range of these guys or capability to shoot at the things that I'm lighting up. And I'm just seeing if I can maybe bait one of them to come up over the edge and get shredded by some of my buddies. You notice I'm in fast mode. See that glowy glow thing right there? It's showing me 80 knots, 80 kilometers. It's not aviation terms, 80 kilometers an hour. Now I see my T-92 buddies getting brave. He's seen me do this for a while, and now we're both kind of thinking the same thing. So I had to hit X to get to the fast, and it starts glowing like that little speedometer. Now, what I don't like about this thing is if you zoom in, it goes away. When you zoom back out, there's a big glowing orange thing right near where there's another big glowing orange thing that means something else. And I did not appreciate that a couple times when I went, oh my God, I'm spotted. Good news is I don't have 6th sense, so I should have known. T-92 rages in. Look at all the camping guys. This is just the meta. There's an IS-3, a JPZ sitting back here amongst other people. Poor T-92 goes in. I'm not really sure why he tried to take them on directly. I just wanted to get by, and that's where this thing really shines. I mean, I just went by. I leave these guys in the dust. I'm doing 80 knots kilometers here, so I'm going to come up here and I'll put a little shot on him. And I'll bounce, of course, because why not? And see how I get hit. They don't really have too much. There's a sturve back here, too, of all bloody. It's insane how many people camp in this game anymore. Down he goes. Let's see if we can get him dead. There we go. And holy cow, don't kill me, please. Uh-oh. Oh, boy. Oh, geez. Nope, don't do it. Run away. And there I go. The T-49. Oh, of course. T-49 derps me. So, all right. 344, 420 damage spotting. Had fun. Had fun. Didn't particularly play it well. If I'm going to run into the backfield that early with that many guns, I'm probably going to die. Except that you got to be kidding me. IS-3, prototype, sturve, T-49. What? This game is awesome, man. Still, my fault for going early, but it is a possibility, and it was fun to kill a couple artillery off early because they pretty much deserve it, I think. Just getting artillery friends. Let's move on to the next one. All right, here's another example of some of the possibilities of this. You'll notice me goofing around for a little bit right here. We're on Fisherman's Bay, and I spawned into the south side. I just wanted to see if I could jump these things. Thank God I did not get that jump, otherwise it would have landed right on that conqueror. You'll notice that I'm in fast mode. You can see how hard it is to maneuver in fast mode. I should have shifted, hit X, and shifted into maneuver mode. That would have helped me turn. What that does is allows the wheels on the corners of the thing to turn a little bit when you turn, and that gives you a sharper turn. So I'm doing 80 kilometers coming up here and just starting to use some of the mobility of this thing. There's a lot of fishtailing and things if you overcorrect while you're turning. So it's something you have to be careful with. Some of the faster tanks, you have to watch out for that, but this one, it's very pronounced. A lot of people have already said it on their streams. I'm just doing some jumps and stuff. Woohoo! Messing around, seeing what this thing can do. FV gets spotted. There's nobody up here. Look at all the guys back behind. So using some speed and a little bit of both terrain and bush cover, I'm able to come up here and at least light a few things up. Unfortunately, because, I mean, look at the green line. Look at the green line. So I'm not running any cruise skills that help my spotting range. I have vents. I don't have brothers in arms. So other than the vents, I'm about as bad as you can get spotting. And look how tight that thing is from my white line. That was a good jump. I think there was a Dukes of Hazzard yeehaw that happened right there as I was playing. And you may be wondering, well, Guido, are you actually going to help win this game? Well, maybe. Let's see what happens right here. You can't blame a guy for doing a little racing around, can you? Yeah, probably. Help your team win. Let's see what happens here. Heading back to the middle. I think I try one more jump. I may even... Yeah, there we go. Okay, there's a great example right there of another tank probably would have done an endo or rolled. And also, because I didn't hit straight on my wheels, you notice I damaged myself like a buffoon. So it's not impervious. It's not impervious to damage. There is a... I switched over to maneuver mode in case I need to turn around. Remember, it does go backwards as fast as it goes forward. There is a mechanic on here whereby you can hold the key, I believe it's control, and essentially rev the engine and do a little boost kind of thing. Unfortunately, and spacebar is involved. I want to say it's control spacebar or something like that. I'm not quite certain, to be quite honest, because I think the key that I had that did it was mapped to something else, and I haven't been able to get it to work. Watch some of the other community contributors. Talgrim in specifically shows how to use that capability. I couldn't make it work. So now we're going to come down here and use a little bit of this thing's mobility. So I screwed around the middle. I kind of helped them deal with the over on the other side, on the west side a bit. And now I'm just going to come around here because this E75 is pushed in. This is something we're going to find a little bit more of these days. That's one of its problems. See how it just has a really hard time? I got to back up, shift my back end to the right, then go forward. You'll notice that I clicked down to maneuver mode so I could actually turn. This spot right here is a little bit more viable now for the enemy team to push in. And the reason is, I'll do a video on this later, there are some more buildings right along here that have been added that make filtering into this town a little bit easier for the heavies. Now there's actually a brawl down in town where there didn't used to be because you couldn't get there. So I'm just watching the E75. He's staring at me. Got other guys poking at him. And this is where the harassing nature of a light tank, really any light tank can do this kind of thing. Go to speed. Notice how it's going backwards as fast as forward. Can be disorienting when you're driving backwards because the turn directions are opposite. It's the same thing in a tank, but you're not doing 60, 80 kilometers backwards. So now we'll just get going here. When you do hit X and shift from fast mode to maneuver mode, it kind of does like a downshift or an upshift. It will slow temporarily and then start going again. That's kind of annoying. I wish that mechanic wasn't there, or that part of the mechanic wasn't there. So we're going to come around the back here. And notice I'm not really burning the place up. I've done 197. I've got 527 assist damage, but I'm just kind of all over the place. Just a little shot on him. Doesn't do anything. Finally get up into his turret. Notice I'm carrying all kinds of heat right here. It's just difficult to maneuver. It really is. Even in maneuver mode, I ran into buildings and edges like that constantly. It was very disorienting. And unlike the tank where you can just shift the hole and kind of slide out of the way, with this thing, that's heat. So I got to go through this stupid. There we go. With this thing, you got to back up. You can't just shift the hole and get your hole from being caught on something. Shot into his hatch right there. You actually have to back up, shift yourself off of the thing, and move on. It's just something you have to learn about it. Looking, there we go. No, not there. Yeah, that's the sweet spot right there. That's it. That's it. Yeah, there we go. So I got up to 1,067, 800. Not a whole lot. Not really writing home about that kind of thing, but And it's, oh, geez. And you'll notice right there, more than likely any other tank in the game would have sat on its side or potentially rolled over on its roof. But there's another great example of the way it's mech'd right now so that you don't fall over. I have other jumps where it's kind of like a kick out, like a BMX rider will do, go off tabletop kind of thing, and then come back down. That sort of, it looks like that's what it does. It kind of looks like it's rolling, but then it'll come back and land on its feet like a cat. Meow. And we'll go ahead and head up here. Now, late game, man, this is where this thing will shine. You keep enough hit points, I can at least take one hit from most of these guys, it looks like, minus the, is that an ISU? What is that bad boy? Yeah, the ISU will take me down. There we go. So I got hit. One was no damage, so that was lucky, otherwise I would have disappeared right there in the Type 61. Misses, thank goodness. And see how fast I moved backwards? That's one of the things about this. And again, this tank wants you to keep moving. The only way you're going to survive, really, most of the time, is to keep moving. Unless you happen to be hiding in a bush somewhere. But then again, you don't have any view range. Oh, get him. Okay, so that was taking a while to reload the clip. And I ended up with 1,500, 1,300 assists. Quite frankly, one of my best games. I'll show you my best game, but that was one of the better ones right there of all the sadness that I attempted to lay on the populace of World of Tanks. Let's move on to the next one. This example, I am on Sand River, and I have come up here to the northeast corner. I don't have a lot of help. I've got in a mill and a Carnarvon. One thing, I keep saying one thing, but it is one thing. It's one thing. It's one thing about this tank. Of the many things, this is a one thing. When you go to spots like this, it's fast enough to get away, provided you start heading out early. I don't know what this guy's doing. Driving up onto the wall right there. Maybe he disconnected like I've been doing for days and days. I guess I have a little sympathy for that. So the bat chat is there. You can get away on an open map like this. See how fast it turns right there under maneuver mode? See, I just spun right around. Here's something to think about with this. And what happens is if you... I have trouble tracking this dude. If you turn with your foot off the gas, it turns very tight. If you turn while accelerating, it turns less tight. I don't know. There you go. That's what happens. So I'm just waiting for this mutant. I'm waiting for my reload, but I want to hit this guy in the side if I can. There we go. Just shot into him. See if we can put another one in. You're not killing anybody fast with 170 alpha. I'm worried about the artillery. I'm also worried about somebody shooting me from down below, because every time I poke around that corner, a guy on that ridge can be right on draw distance. This guy's going after him. So, oh boy. Nope. That was a bit risky, and he missed. See how fast it backs up, though? That's a strength. In those like poke situations like that, a slower tank, basically any other tank, probably would have taken some hits. Now, my mill's dying. There's not a lot I can do, so it's time to get out of here. The WZ's coming, and now I will just back up and go. Notice you can't just shift, and I click it into speed mode. I get the glowy bit going on right there. Now we're going to get ourselves a nice jump, I think, right here. Let's see. Let's admire the jumping action. There we go. And see how it lands on its feet? No damage. Another tank probably would have taken some hits. Whoa. Little wiggle, little jiggle. Makes any tank hard to hit, and one doing 80 kilometers an hour, or knots, is going to be even extra hard to hit. So I'm going to get out of there. There's no reason for the Panhard to sit up there. I'm not going to beat those three or hold that position. So I'm just going to leave the campers to it. I'm sure between the Sturv, the 3 TDs that never left Cap, they should be able to handle that situation. I suppose, though, I can't scoff too much because the Sturv just killed that guy from Cap. There's a couple hits. See how fast I can go downhill? Again, a nice thing that this tank has. I'm dancing around on the edge of being spotted when I shoot right there. Since I don't have 6th sense. There's the depression. Not quite enough. I kind of came up on a weird angle right there. Put a shot into him. Maybe give him another one. No, it bounces. Again, that's backwards. See how you can use that forward-backward stuff? It will get you out of trouble pretty quickly. It's just you have to be cognizant that the maneuvering of it is just a little goofy. I try to shoot into the top of a mill too. I don't really know. This may explain, may go a long ways towards explaining why I'm 43% shooting at targets like that. Now I'm looking down in the south to the east down there, and I'm thinking, all right, how do I get into that backfield and start taking on some of those guys who are camping back there? I did not talk about it, but its elevation is atrocious, like most of the French tanks with these kind of turrets. You see, I got on the side of that hill, and I really couldn't do anything. Not really sure what I'm shooting at. Ignore that part. All right, we're going to get fast. I see a nice ski ramp. I'm going to see what we can do here. Let's see what kind of jump we get out of this thing. Woo! That was a good one. All right, I should get points for that. And 55 damage, so I lied to you. It is possible to damage yourself given a large enough jump, even if you land on your feet. But I only got 55. That would have probably hurt other tanks quite a bit. Unfortunately, the 59 takes down that tank. I was hoping that tank would be alive, the S50TP, so that I came in here with that guy busy with him, but I'm just sort of dodging around, trying to keep the Hulk. I'm going to go right by and kill him, but no, he's going to get blowed up. So they know I'm coming. Oh, well, that hurt. Yeah, that was a T-95. Now, granted, he knew I was coming, but he was sitting up here. I'm doing mock snot. He had no issues, just blapping me right in the side. No idea where he got me, but holy cow, 731, and blap. So, yeah, you go running straight into a stirb, you're probably going to get hit. People at cap, all the TDs that sit at cap these days, when you're assaulting these last positions, that's the kind of thing that's there. I'd have done obviously a lot better if I hadn't just gone straight at them. The speed doesn't matter a whole bunch if you're not giving them any right or left movement to try to deal with, but still, even so, you saw that huge to the T-95 would have been right to left movement, hit me. Now, the more standoff you got, the less relative movement it is, makes it slightly easier shot, but he had to take a bunch of lead, and I'm flying through the air and the guy nails me, so it just happens. That's why the tank is not as survivable as you might think with its speed if you're not careful. All right, let's move on to the last one where I actually had one game that I thought was decent. All right, here's a fun little game. Again, I'm just sort of testing the possibilities, so I just push into a spot that I would never push into in a regular light tank, at least as far forward as I'm going. I just want to see, can I get in and out of all the way up in their face? And I see a 432, so I know I'm spotted early. I take a chance coming up high, and I see all kinds of their guys. Now, they're never going to expect somebody to be right there that fast, and they're all lit up, and then I get really lucky because this Type 5 has lost his mind. He just decides to drive right up the middle. Type 5 takes 380. I just run away, try to make him forget about me for a moment. Notice I got all the way up there and all the way back. I've gathered 972, mostly on the strength of the Type 5 just driving forward. I think once he took all those hit points, he sort of just decided to give up, and he just starts hey diddle diddle right up the middle, which was kind of interesting. So I don't know that right at this moment. I'm sort of just driving around wondering, all right, what is this Type 5? What's his deal? What's he up to? What are you up to, Type 5? That's what I'm thinking right now. I didn't even know he was actually in the middle, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can get around the side of him and kill the Type 5. Let's see what happens here. No, he's sort of looking at me. Let's use this building to put between he and I for the moment. Very lucky they didn't have snipers up on their hill already. Oh, a little bounce off of that rock. And we'll come back around. I'm thinking, well, let's just go finish him. He's just kind of driving. I don't know what his deal is. He's not really looking at me, so I'll just auto-aim him. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Nope, that's a bounce and a kill. Okay, so that's 972. Probably damage. I don't know. Did I deserve it? Well, I think really he was headed over that side, and once he got all those hits from my scouting right there, he just sort of said, screw it, I'm pushing in. Or maybe it was his plan to charge the whole time. I don't know. Shows the possibilities, though, right? I mean, nice speed. This is one of those one of those maps where there is some open ground where you can kind of rage around. You can switch from, yeah, I disconnected momentarily there. That's the kind of stuff I've been dealing with for weeks now. Well, more than 2 months, actually. Oh, look at that. Probably would have put another tank on its side, but with the weird physics they've put in for this, I did not do that. I got a Tiger, too. Holy cow, people shooting at me. And look at all the shots. I will say one thing. It does force more misses than most tanks. Most scout tanks. 20 kilometers an hour slower, and maybe one of those doesn't miss. Just drive right by. You have to be careful as long as there's an opening. Thank you, big fat tank, for letting me get through. There's the Emil. The Emil's shooting at people. Come back around. Little auto aim. There's one. There's two. Oh, we'll just go this way. LTTB is harassing the Tiger 2. Let's not ram each other. Just about reloaded. Hello, Tiger 2. Coming in. Oh, jeez. Give him a little trouble. Yep, there we go. And as long as you can do this without hitting buildings. This turret's having trouble tracking me. Just come around. I'm almost reloaded. There he is. Come on, baby. And he dies. 2000 spotting. It does have trouble going through those rubble and knocking things down. Much like the ELC, it slows it down quite a bit. Most light tanks are slowed by that, but this one seems to be particularly susceptible to it. We'll come around into the backfield. Sort of expected to find the artillery in here. But I've got shots on these guys, so I'll just sit here and spam gold at the Conway. He's looking at me. I thought for a minute maybe I was spotted. I don't have sixth sense, but I backed down and he didn't shoot, so I figured now he probably doesn't see me. Notice my... So let's look at this, because a normal light tank would have... a normal tier 8 light tank maxed out would have had his green line near his white line and spotted that Conway long ago, but I can't even see him, and somebody else gets in there and gets me a looky-loo at him. A bounce for the kill shot, naturally. Or maybe he died before I shot, not sure. So reloading, we're up to 2877. Got 1,266 damage. Two of their tier 10s are alive. The 121's still rolling around the middle. The tortoise is, or the object is over in the castle, and then there's a tortoise back here. He doesn't see me yet, or he doesn't notice me if he does see me. The player doesn't notice me. The tank may have seen me. And then we've got this 3805 right here. We come in here and shoot this guy twice. And he's trying to get turned around on me. I almost make a big mistake right there. Wow. That almost let him have me. Kill him. That took forever. And I see the tortoise finally notices me after I shoot him. And now I need to get behind this dead carcass and make it hard for him to see me. And you can see how difficult, even in maneuver mode, it's really difficult to maneuver this tank like you would normally do. I'm just trying to keep this carcass behind me. Now I'm reloaded. I'm looking for my chance, and down he goes. That brings me up to 4533. 1,716, and I believe the Leopard PTA or somebody else kills this poor guy. Oh, he did take a shot at me. Look at that. I didn't notice that the first time. And down he goes. So 1,700, 4,533 assist. Not an amazing game. Happened to be the most amazing game I had, though. Showing the possibilities of the tank in a mobile kind of map where you can get around, be the fire brigade, just be really annoying. Let's wrap this up. Well, all right then. What's the verdict? What's the verdict? I'm gonna tell you, I don't know. It's a head scratcher. It really is. It's a test version. Things may change. I don't want to come down hard on one side or the other. Frankly, I don't know what side to come down on. So let's just talk about it. Let's look at the pros and cons. What's good about it? It's fast. It can get back and punish artillery and TDs that aren't being careful. A little bit better, not a lot, a little bit better than some of the other faster light tanks. On the right maps, it can kite and do some things, but the view range hurts it quite a bit. It's hard to drive, but I think you'd get used to it after doing it. It's not impossible to drive. It does drive a lot different than other tanks. It's got some new game mechanics, the speed, the maneuver version, the speed version. The fact that it can go backwards as fast as it can go forward. A lot of those things are going to be capabilities and meta gameplay that's not really developed yet. People will develop it. It's going to be similar to light tanks, but yet a little bit different in some of the things it can do. They do have to be careful. It's a premium. If they overbuff it, make it too good, then they're going to not be able to nerf it. At least that's what they say. Legal problems, yada yada. So they do have to be careful there. Problem is, since it's first in class, it's the flagship, that's hard to do because they don't have the whole wheeled line out. They drop this, and then all the expectations are on this thing. Either way you slice it. So that's definitely a hard one. So, probably unsatisfying as far as my overall view on it. I don't rate them 7 of 10 or any. I don't usually do things like that. It's good. I think it's got a very high skill floor and a very high skill ceiling. Newer players and less skilled players are going to have a hard time with it. They're probably going to YOLO a lot and die. Hell, I even had a 13% survival rate. That's atrocious. But if you can resist the temptation to do that, hey, I'm so fast you can't hurt me thing, because that's not true. It's more true than other tanks, but not enough that you should solely rely on it like I tried to. If you can resist that temptation, then it can be a pretty good tank, I think. I am going to go back, put a good crew in it, get rid of the camo net, put something else useful or more useful on there, and see where we go from there. I think that I'm only going to go up. I doubt very seriously this will remain a 43% win rate tank for me with that low of a DPM. I'll just have to learn it as I go. But just realize there will be some growing pains. You may be one of the guys that just jumps into it. Some of the CCs did that, and they did just fine from the very beginning. But don't be surprised if that happens to you. And then we'll revisit this when it comes out in its final version and see what's up. Hopefully you got all of the letters for the code. That's what those letters were that were showing up. So if you're the first one to put all those together and put them into your little code deal on the web page, then you will have a Panhard rental for 7 days. Enjoy yourself. That's me signing off. I appreciate you guys coming by. I do appreciate the support of the channel. I know we've got a bunch of new people that showed up, at least 30, maybe more. Please hang around. I hope you support the channel and stick around. And make sure that you are participating down in the comments, because that's, I think, the comments section is where we learn even probably as much as we learn in the videos. And I know I learned something as well. Take it easy, guys. We will see you.